afternoon, venerable monks, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am Devin Hewage. Today I am going to talk about the impact of Anagarika Dharmapala's island-wide sermons on the 20th century Sri Lankan society. He was an ordinary man who devoted his life and followed his dream to reawaken the light of Buddhism in an underprivileged and mistreated society in the early 20th century in Sri Lanka. People referred to Anagarika Dharmapala as the model of Buddhist activism in modern society. He, unlike the ruthless Western invaders, was armed with insurmountable courage, willpower, and deeply powerful speeches. In the early 20th century, Sri Lanka was a British colony, rapidly engulfed in Western culture. Those were the days when the Buddhists of Sri Lanka were reluctant to declare themselves Buddhists. Buddhism was considered to be the faith of unurbanized people. At this very time, a revivalistic activity was carried out by lay Buddhist leaders. Among them, Anagarika Dharmapala was the great personality who succeeded in the effort of reforming the Buddhist society. Anagarika Dharmapala, formerly known as Don David Hewage, was born in 1864 as the eldest son of a leading businessman, Don Kaulis Hewage, and his wife, Mallika Hewage, who are both devoted Buddhists. Young David was brought up in a Buddhist environment, though he received his education in Christian schools. These days, Venerable Migettu Attagunananda Thera was engaged in a famous verbal battle called Panurawadia against Christian missionaries. Young Dharmapala listens to the orations of this great speaker with much inspiration and developed an attachment to this patriotic monk. When Colonel Henry Steele Olcott and Madam Helena Blavatsky arrived in Sri Lanka as a consequence of the famous Panudara controversy in 1880, Dharmapala naturally became a great friend of these two foreigners. Colonel Olcott worked hard to win back for the Sinhalese their lost rights. This Buddhist flag, which he proudly hoists on all important Buddhist occasions representing the Buddhist community, is also a creation of Colonel Olcott. Anagarika Dharmapala was convinced that no nation could be great unless it was politically, culturally, and religiously independent. However, he did not want to risk losing the facilities and technology that the British had already introduced in Sri Lanka. But he criticized the British for their economic policy, as people had to pay for everything imported from abroad, including the staple food of the Sinhalese, rice. He tried to open the eyes of the Sri Lankans and emphasize the importance of opening factories where we make our own clothes and other requisites. The Sinhalese were advised by Anagarika Dharmapala not to be ashamed of their religion, but to take pride in their culture. Listening to this advice, most of the Sinhalese chose to revert to Buddhism. He also inspired young Buddhist men such as Walisingha Harishchandra, who continued his service for many years. Anagarika Dharmapala disapproved of how anglicized Sinhalese people willingly took to British names and apparel, just in hope of a better lifestyle. In keeping with his preaching, he himself changed his name from David to Dharmapala. Another popular issue raised by Anagarika Dharmapala was the prevention of slaughtering innocent cows for food. Drinking alcohol was also strongly opposed by Anagarika Dharmapala's campaign. He traveled in a carriage with a large, vibrant banner hailing to the streets, "Do not eat beef and do not intoxicate oneself with alcohol." This, however, went against Christian traditions and angered Christians who even branded Anagarika Dharmapala a racist. However, this was simply untrue. Anagarika Dharmapala held no antagonism towards the Christians, and he respected and appreciated other religions and their beliefs as well. Anagarika Dharmapala firmly believed that the problems in Ceylon were to be resolved by those of Sri Lankan blood. In order to create such intelligent and dignified leaders, Anagarika Dharmapala wanted every Sinhalese child to have an education of a high standard. The people then listened to his sermons and were convinced of the truth of his philosophy. Gradually, there came about a cultural revival. The people began to take pride in their religion, their language, and their customs. Above all, several younger men of his time joined the Buddhist Forward movement to guide the destinies of future generations of Buddhists in Sri Lanka. The popularity he gained as a famous Buddhist activist helped Anagarika Dharmapala to establish the London Buddhist Vihara, which serves as a major focal point of Buddhism in Europe. On the 16th of January 1933, Anagarika Dharmapala was ordained a bhikkhu as Srideva Mitra Dharmapala. Sadly, Srideva Mitra Dharmapala Thera passed away on the 29th of April 1933 at Sarnath, India. Anagarika Dharmapala was a spark of hope in the darkness of cruelty and colonization in 20th century Sri Lanka. But today, in the 21st century, as a proud, independent nation, we are all grateful to Anagarika Dharmapala for his patriotic mission, which enabled us to regain the pristine glory of our religious, cultural, and political independence. Thank you for your kind attention.
That truly was a command performance by the youngster, and I think your applause probably reflected his performance too.